found. I've heard that reported many times. I've yet to see the proof of it. I haven't heard the business owner. Yeah, I would love to see a business owner come out and say, I asked Kyle Rittenhouse to defend my business, or I asked this organization that he's a member of to do it. I have not seen that. I imagine if they did say that, they would be targeted and their business would definitely be burned the next day. I also have heard rumors that Antifa is trying to find Rittenhouse's what cell he's in because they want to kill him. And I've also heard, and I heard this on Ryan Dawson's show, and he was speculating, so he doesn't know, that they were all Antifa. Everybody he killed was Antifa. And it is interesting that everyone he killed was a felon. I mean, whatever you want to say about these rioters, the idea that like all of them are felons, well, technically they all are felons because they're rioting or whatever, but like that they have previous records, that's very interesting. What are the odds, right? What are the odds that all the people going for him, provoking him, blah, 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 attacking him were felons? So I do wonder about that, but we don't know. That's just speculation. Rosenbaum was burning a trash. One of the militia put it out, and he got one of the militia's face because put out the fire. Yes, I've seen that video, and it's possible that it's Rittenhouse putting out the fire. It's hard to see the person putting out the fire. It's not clear. It could be him. There is a video of Rittenhouse with a fire extinguisher just before that, though. So it's possible that it was him. We don't know. Sitting here arguing about this is completely pointless. Well, it's interesting, broke microphone. You seem to be quite spicy lately. Good to hear from you. It's not completely pointless. You're watching it. All right. If you think this is completely pointless, you can turn the channel and watch something else. I mean, you're just sitting on your computer doing nothing anyway. So fuck all. What does it matter what I'm talking about? Maybe it'll change somebody's mind, right? Yeah, I never know that. I don't go into this. I'm not fucking naive. I don't think that like a million liberals are going to watch this and become right-wing, NRA supporters, but people on the margins do actually change their minds. I get people who message me saying that they did, so I will do it on that, and because I think it's cathartic. So it's not pointless to me, and you're watching, so it's not pointless to you. And if you don't agree with that, it's not a public school. You don't have to go. There's no compulsion. The second and third guy might have thought they were stopping a mass shooting. That part is less clear. Yeah, that's an interesting point. If the whole second shooting, it's more clear in terms of what happened, but it's more dependent on that first shooting because they happened about a minute and a half apart. That mob is chasing him because of the first shooting. If the first shooting is not justified, if it was not justified, they're trying to stop a criminal, right? They're trying to stop a mass shooting, and they're heroes. And you see this on the left. Hey, he's a hero trying to stop a mass shooting. And maybe that's what they were thinking. Based on what we know about them, I don't think that's likely. And based on the first shooting, that's the only thing that really matters legally and morally, I'll argue, is I think that's self-defense. He's getting attacked. He has a reasonable suspicion he's reasonable to think that his life is in danger because the guy's going for his gun. He's hearing shots fired also, not by him, but by other apparent protesters, by a guy who's been very aggressive all night. And so that's a justified homicide. If people see that and go, oh, that's an unjustifiable homicide, let's get that guy, then that's a tragedy. But that's not Rittenhouse's fault either. That's the fault of Rosenbaum. I think all of that would then become Rosenbaum is guilty of a lot more crimes, but he's dead. So, you should be talking about the Stalinist anti-reality discord happening about this case instead. Well, that's kind of the point, like the red herrings and all that. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I agree that's an interesting part of it, and I'm definitely talking about it. I don't know. Like, look, I'm getting into Marxism. Don't worry about all the books, critical race theory, all that stuff. I'll get to all that. Super important. I agree. I'm going to talk about communism. You know, I hate communism. I hate communists. You know, it really strains credulity on the tolerance of society. Hopper was not wrong when he was like, look, what do you do when somebody is like, we need to, establish communism? That's the worst thing you can possibly do. And what do you do about those people? I don't think that we should turn to fascism to stop them, but that doesn't mean we should do nothing either. He was a lifeguard, so I assumed he learned EMT. I see EMT. Maybe I'm getting this wrong, but like EMT is a profession, like a highly trained like ambulance person. A lifeguard has some basic CPR, some basic first aid. I don't think that makes them an EMT, but maybe he had more than I thought. Maybe it's more than I would think. I've met lifeguards before, and very often they have an attitude like they're really highly qualified, and they're not. They're typically like mid-teen, 14, 15-year-olds who, know CPR. It's like getting your first aid merit badge in Boy Scouts. Hey, fascist, I'm going to take your guns and kill you. Oh my God, why aren't you letting me assault you and gun me down? Ouch, stop oppressing me. Yeah, there's something super mendacious about left-wing people. It's just super, super mendacious, where they come on super aggressive, super belligerent, super insulting, right? They'll yell, scream, they'll burn, blah, blah, blah. And then you do any reaction at all, and suddenly they're the victim. And like, oh, and it's like, bitch, you were trying to burn. Like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So that's where my attitude falls. I'm like, dude, what did you expect? If you want to protest the police, I get it, man. Fucking, I've always wanted to get rid of the police, but that doesn't mean you go burn down businesses. That doesn't also mean that you pair that with, and this is what the Marxists do in the United States. They pair like an issue that's like a plausible issue, or that sits in a place that many people find it receptive. Oh, racism exists. Yeah, it does. Racism can be bad. Yeah, it can be. Okay, now we need a communist utopia. No. That's, these are separable issues, and you're putting them in a basket for strategic reasons, and I'm not going to let you do that. Kai's lawyer seems to think the bullet came from somebody else. We need an autopsy. We need to see all that. They should know that by now, right? There's no way they haven't gone over that body. And if he's got something other than, the 223, if he's got 9mm or something in his back, or even if they're the same bullet, but from the angle, right, they should be able to tell. We haven't heard anything on that, and I would be surprised. I mean, I'm actually kind of curious. That's like, where is that? Is the coroner under pressure not to say? Because if he's got other bullets in him, this suddenly became, Rittenhouse's defense then could be, my bullets didn't kill him. That guy's bullets killed him. He's going to do the self-defense though, and I think he's got good evidence for that. I've used avowed anarchists use the state lines argument. So have I. I've had avowed anarchists, say he should have called the cops, right? He shouldn't do vigilante. That's not his job. I'm like, you're an anarchist. Don't you think that this is exactly what you're supposed to do? You defend yourself. You organize with other people to defend yourself. That's what you do. You don't call the cops. The cops make it worse. It's not their job. That's not what their job is anyway. All right. They like to propagandize that that's what they do, and it's not what they do. And so, yeah, the state lines thing doesn't mean a fuck to me. I don't give a shit. I wouldn't care if you went to Canada to do it. Like Canadian businesses can be valued as well. Nice to see a herb. Bad, corrupt cops are no more of a... Yeah, broke microphone. That the critique of the police goes way farther than bad cops. There's all these incentive problems. How they're organized, it's who they take their orders from. All those are real things that even if you had good cops, and you do have some, I'm sure, doesn't really matter. So again, not that there aren't bad cops, and the incentives of being a cop do incentivize people to be bad apples, but that's not the crux of the argument. The crux is that they have a monopoly. They have no incentive to do a good job. They're divorced from the market. They don't work for you. They work for the state. They enforce the state. They do what the politicians say. There's a double standard. We all know that. Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or any of these people, and even way smaller, like, your local mayor, your local sheriff, they get away with all kinds of bullshit because there's a monopoly, and it gets abused constantly to our detriment, right? Institutionally abused, not institutionally racist. This is what's really annoying about these protests. It's really fucked up about these protests. There are actual systemic institutional problems with the police. It's not that they're racist. They're not. That's not the problem. That's not a problem at all. The problem is institutional, and it's systematic. It's not racist. That's what's so annoying about these Black Lives Matter protests. And it's infuriating that they whip up this uproar because a black guy gets killed, but never when a white guy gets killed. So nobody gives a shit about Daniel Shaver, or Tony Tempa, or these other people, and there's more of them. right? And I'm not saying that from the white and I hate that white people are getting killed. I hate that people are getting killed, and I hate that there's this in our culture. Some people are worth more, right? If you're black and you die, it's a tragedy and we need to have riots, blah blah blah. If you're white and you die, it's like, well, nothing. And that I'm not doesn't exercise me as a white person. It exercises me as like, where's the justice there? And also now there's clearly this misalignment where the problem is systemic, right? But it's not racist. It's because of the institution, and largely derived from the fact that it's a monopoly and is funded by taxes and not by the market. Kyle was a scared kid with a deadly weapon. I would not call him a kid. I'm gonna go with the Team 2.0 definition here. Kid is a term for a prepubescent goat. Let's use that in the Bible. And whatever you want to say about Kyle, he wasn't prepubescent. You can say he's a young adult. You can say he's technically a minor. He's not a kid. I agree he probably was scared. I would be scared. I don't know anyone who would not be scared with a bunch of leftists burning things, yelling at you and taunting you, and then attacking you. Of course he was scared. You're allowed to be scared. Being scared doesn't make you guilty of anything. I'm skeptical that there will be a trial for the killing. The prosecutor has a duty to not bring a charge that they cannot meet. Unless they invalidate the self-defense claim, they should drop the charges. Jared, what do you think the likelihood of that even is? And I would be interested to see. I mean, I'm sure you read the for those who don't know, Jared is in law school. I hope I don't give away too much by saying that. But when I read that statement in that video, I couldn't believe, like, there's exculpatory language for every incident. Kyle gets attacked. He shoots in response. It's like, okay, he gets followed aggressively. They go for his gun. The most important one is the Rosenbaum one. It says he's being chased, that Rosenbaum throws something at him, and that Rosenbaum tries to take his gun. Boom, 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 boom. That's on video too, so like we know all that happened. And we have a good eyewitness with the McGinnis. I forget his first name, but so-and-so McGinnis was the guy who administered. I mean, this guy administered first aid to Rosenbaum, so it's not like he hates Rosenbaum or whatever. He was right there, and he's like, yeah, I haven't heard him say it was self-defense, but his description of what happened is self-defense. So maybe it'll get dropped. In Wisconsin, you have a right to self-defense even if you're provoked. Wisconsin self-defense laws are very permissive. And on top of that, he was running away in every video. He's trying to run away. The idea, somebody was telling me, oh, he's hunting. It's like he's out hunting protesters. I'm like, you hunt protesters by running away? That doesn't make any sense. And again, he exercised, look, I don't know what I would do. I've never been in this situation. But if I had just been attacked, fallen to the ground, had 2 or 3 people come at me, I shoot at 3 of them, I kill one, somebody comes after me with a gun, I kill another one. That second, other people are charging towards me, directly beeline for me, and I level my rifle at them. I'm probably pulling the trigger. Okay? I'm probably pulling the trigger. That guy, the other people charging him, point this out in the video, you can see it. He's killed Anthony Huber. He shot Grosskreutz in the arm, ripped off his tricep, who's armed, disarmed. Joke is now he's called Lefty because his right arm is gone. And you've got other rioters mobbing you. I could understand. I'm not going to say I would do this because I haven't been there, but like I can understand somebody just unloading on all of those people. And he did not do that. So if he was just like this mass shooter, technically this isn't a mass shooting. Because there's only 3 victims, not to be technical, but like that is the FBI definition here. Unless you're going to say everybody who there is just a victim, which is what the Brady campaign would say. But I would think even those would have been justified, especially there's one who's running right at him. Like he does put his hands up, so that would have been fucked up in court. The one guy who does put his hands up is holding a gun and does like a jig. And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, you got your hands up, but your hand's on a gun. And also, we've got a post from you on Facebook telling your buddy you wish you'd killed him. Going to start a Kyle fan club. I think there's going to be a lot of those coming up. Yeah, when the guy fakes his surrender to Kyle when he's on the ground and then pulls on him, gross. Glad he lost his bicep. Yeah, it looks like a fake out. It looks like he was running towards Kyle, and before he knew what was happening, Kyle had a gun pointed at him. So he stops and he tries to like move to the side, points the gun at his head, and Kyle blows his bicep off. Be very curious to know if Kyle was trying to blow his bicep off. If he was, that's amazing marksmanship. My guess is he was just trying to shoot him. That's where it had, you know. Kyle was on the floor. He was on the floor, which means he couldn't have retreated more. There's a great video angle of Rosenbaum clearly lunging at Rittenhouse, just as Rittenhouse turns towards Rosenbaum and squeezes off the headshot. So the two most seen videos, there's one from across the street and there's one from, you know, behind a car. You can't see that very well. They go behind a car. There is another one that I've seen from the opposite direction, but that didn't look as high quality. If you can find that video and post it, I would love to see that. Mr. Liberty or Death. What I mean is this line of argument is just wrong. Well, I think pointing this out helps people. But I'd be, you know, if you, and look, I'm not saying this is the only line of argument either. Look, this is just a couple arguments. I'm not saying this is the totality. I would never say that. If you have others that you'd like to advance, by all means, post them and we'll talk about them. No, I think you're right on the gun part, on charity. Whatever laws you want to dictate people's habits for health defense requires force, which equates to being virtuous when government makes you. Yeah, and it's not, you know, the guy who got me into politics way back, John Montgomery, said, you know, there's no such thing as forced philanthropy, right? If I force you to do something, it's not charity, right? Charity has to be voluntary. That's not philanthropy, that's not charity. And so all these welfare programs, whatever you want to say about them, they're not charity. Okay, it's compulsion, it's coercion, and it's, you know, not to mention ineffective and wasteful and corrupt, blah blah blah. So it is interesting that you would suspect somebody who's, hey, we're gonna. It's fine to tax you to fund the police, although I guess that's now the left is saying not to do that. But you know, for now, until they realize all their programs require it, right? No cops means if we get rid of cops, public schools are gone, right? Like if we're not going to enforce these taxes on people, all this shit's gone. So they are not gonna, the woke left is not going to sacrifice the beneficent Leviathan to fucking assuage super sensitive black people. Or actually, as it turns out, most of the time, super sensitive woke white people. Oh my gosh. What is your response to property is more valuable than life argument? Suspicious that they are willing to start a revolution over property despite them making that argument. Yeah, that's a little interesting that they'll be like, property, that I mean Marxism is materialistic, right? The whole point is to change the economy and blah blah blah. Yeah, my argument to that is that you need property to live, right? We can't just be naked. We have to have property. And you have a right to it or you don't. And if they're going to say that you can't defend it, then you're saying that it's all forfeit, that you can't. That is what that amounts to. Saying that all your property, you have a duty to be robbed, you have a duty to be victimized. The only, I guess the logic there would be like, you can defend yourself from death, but that's it. And no, that's bullshit. And I mean, and I don't think even they would believe that. So let's say we're just going to march in and take all the black people's stuff, right? I mean, you could actually use this as a justification for slavery. We're just taking your property, right? We're just making you work and taking your property, but we're not killing you, right? They weren't killing the slaves. And if the slaves tried to resist, if the slaves were like, I'm going to resist and I'm going to kill you, then the left people, the people who say that would be like, well, that's wrong. You shouldn't resist because, you know, life is more valuable than property. You can't kill somebody just because they stole your property, right? Just because they stole the cotton that you picked doesn't mean that you have the right to kill them. So it's a totally vacuous argument. and it's one that's not made in good faith, as is always the case with fucking Marxists. I mean, Lenin and Trotsky, all of them admitted that you lie. Like, you will say you believe one thing to get what you want. They all do it. They've been steeped in that culture. Some of them to the point they don't even know that that's where it's coming from. That's just how they are. You cannot trust them. They're snakes. I mean, literally, like, you can't trust them. You can't be friends with them. You can't give them an inch. They'll take the whole Soviet Union. So no, I don't like that argument. It's stupid. Which state is the most pro Second Amendment? My Senator Corman, Republican Texas, says unlicensed gun ownerships need to be eliminated. A local Texas rep is filling bill making constitutional carry legal here. So definitely not Texas. Vermont had that title for a very long time because Vermont had no gun laws at all at the state level. So Vermont, and it may still, they've started to implement some gun control in Vermont, so it's losing its, and other states are catching up. Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, North Dakota, Indiana, New Hampshire, Maine, Tennessee. Like, we've gotten a big swath of the interior West, and Alaska, another one. I think it was Wyoming was the first state to go to constitutional carry. Again, Vermont always had it. Every other state had restrictions. I think Wyoming was the first at this point 15, 20 years ago. Alaska was soon thereafter. And now we're like 16, 17 states that are in constitutional carry. So really we're looking at a case where we've got, I think it's 16 or 17 states that are pretty good. Not just constitutional carry isn't the only thing. Full registry is another thing. But Texas is not. Texas is like an average state when it comes to that. Now, some of the intuitions people have in Texas about like using a gun in self-defense are pretty good. Like that guy who went and shot robbers at an adjoining house. I think in a lot of states he would have been in more trouble. If that happened in Massachusetts or Pennsylvania or something, he might have faced a way more trouble than he did. In Texas, he walked. I mean, he went and talked to the cops and they let him go. Prosecutors said they weren't going to charge him, and they never did. Duncan Lemp, yeah. Like, where was the outrage for that? I mean, some of the libertarians talked about it, so they made a point, but like nobody else cared. I think the likelihood is very high, especially given the written statement. They set it up to allow for an arrest, but also drop charges. I don't have a problem with the arrest per se. Yeah, so I agree. Like self-defense, you kill somebody, even if it's legitimate, it should be scrutinized. Now, obviously, anarchists, this should be a private court. The family of the person you kill seeks restitution. Says, "Hey, you killed our family member," and then they're like, "Nah, your family member fucked up and attacked me. So, honestly, you guys should chalk up or whatever." We don't have an anarchist system. Don't have a polycentric legal order. That's fine. So, I don't have a problem with this getting investigated. I don't even have a problem per se of there being a trial necessarily. One of the lawyers I did watch, and I think you probably watched him too, said this looks like they're giving him an out. And so it is possible that, hey, they feel like they have to make an arrest because 3 white dudes got shot. Again, so many people were saying that this was racist. Like, you got a white guy killing other white guys, or, I mean, some of them are Jewish, so some people are going to quibble about them being characterized as white. Fine, whatever. But like, the idea that this was a racist crime seems very unlikely, and his statements and the statements of the militia people were, pretty pro BLM. None of them were saying, fuck you, BLM. None of you were saying, fuck black people, go back to Africa. None of that. It was, don't burn down businesses. like do what you want, protest how you want, don't burn down a business. That seems like a perfectly reasonable, like, an unimpeachably reasonable sentiment to have, and that's the sentiment he apparently have. And if you want to speculate and say, well, yeah, he was cleaning graffiti, and yeah, he was a lifeguard, and yeah, he said he wanted to do medical aid, and there's video of him giving medical aid, and there's video of him stopping arson, but deep down in his heart, I know he's really a bloodthirsty killer. Okay, all right, let's have some more spectral evidence. Let's interview some witches and see what they have to say. I'm trying to protect the centipath at the Alamo from being vandalized. Yeah, Juan Guerrero is turning his grave. I've read that the arrest was politically motivated. I'd love to see where you read that, Jared. That's entirely plausible. There, in fact, the idea that politics wouldn't be involved in this case is ridiculous. Obviously, it's involved. Isn't the tactic in the U.S. legal system to overcharge people and intimidate them to pleading down? Yeah, they do that all the time. But it's hard to do in a case where we're talking about homicide, right? You can't, like, first degree homicide is as high as you can go. He's not doing a plea deal unless they come out. I mean, the only thing I've read this, if they come and say, we'll drop everything except for the charge of, having an assault right, open carrying, which he may not even be guilty of that. But let's just say they say, okay, option one, we don't even charge you with the homicides or the murder. All that's gone. That's all self-defense. We'll charge you with, open carrying, and that's whatever, a fine, 6 months, time served. And if you say no, then we will charge you with homicide. I mean, what's he supposed to do then? He could be facing life in prison, or he could walk, in a week or right away. I hope that's what they do. I would love them to just say, you know what, sorry, we got a court date for your speeding ticket, because he had a speeding ticket in Kenosha. That's the other thing people say, he's never been there. He's got a speeding ticket from there. He was in the court system. I don't know if it was from that day or what, but yeah. He actually shows a good deal of restraint. I was impressed. He's running away. He is running away. He's not, bring it, nigger, I'm going to kill you. Not that that would be the thing that he would say, because they were all white. Bring it, kike or Jew or whatever. Like, not that he even knew. He was, that is going to be taken out of context. Oh, I got unfriended by people when I quoted Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum was taunting, shoot me, nigger, shoot me, nigger. Dude, he's literally asking for it. And people are like, how dare you say that? I'm quoting the guy that you're saying is a martyr, but okay, whatever. I think he showed a lot of restraint. He ran away. He went to the cops. Apparently the cops were like, go home. So he was like, oh, all right, I'll go home. Like, he goes up, hands up. He doesn't shoot anyone. He doesn't absolutely have to. Everybody he shot attacked him. And at least 2 people struck him and did not get shot. Although he definitely, the guy with the white pants who drop kicks him, he pulls the trigger on that guy and he misses. So, they've changed the definition of mass shooting to 3 or more people. So Kyle is a mass shooter. Yeah, but self-defensive mass shooting is legal. Every gang shooting is also a mass shooting, then of which hundreds occur last week. Oh, I mean, that's funny. Those who are accusing us of valuing our property more than their lives value our property more than their lives. Well, in the case of Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Huber and Mr. Kreuzkreutz, that is correct. None of them are even Jews, just Roman. Maybe, I don't know. People were debating this. Grosskreutz, that's German. Huber's German. Rosenbaum, isn't that Jewish? I don't know. Kid defended himself plain and simple. Tried to tired of the control narratives. Yeah, and I just saw that Facebook is taking down everything that's pro Rittenhouse and saying he's a mass shooter, so you can't support him. Jewish, Ashkenazi DNA is over 90% European, mostly from Italy and Slav countries. Yeah. Well, look at them. I mean, other than their dicks, you can't tell, right? So, off-topic question, but I want to start restoring, but I have a disease that requires me to basically be on antibiotics for the rest of my life. Will that negatively affect my restoration, mitosis? I have no idea. There's nothing about restoration that encourages bacterial infection, so you should be fine as far as that goes. I have no idea if that will affect mitosis. My guess is probably not, because just going on, if that was true, then going on antibiotics would mean you'd have to watch your weight, because if your mitosis was impaired and you gained weight, your skin would split. So unless your doctor told you to be worried about, gaining weight or putting on muscle, you're probably fine. but you know, ask a doctor to be sure. I just see a kid running away from a psycho. Banshee is trying to unarm him and kill him. In that kid's position, I would be equally frightened as well. Yeah, and I asked in one of the videos, after he shoots Rosenbaum and he runs away, somebody else, it sounds like he says radium them, but he was actually saying, oh, I forget. I heard what it was, like not curb stomp him, but yeah, basically they were admonishing him to kill him, beat the shit out of him. Wait, everyone, unrelated news announcement. Michael Humer and David Friedman will be debating two cringe YouTube ancoms, non-compete and Thought Slime on September 11th. Wow, I would love to see that. Humer and Friedman are top-notch debaters. And wow, that'll be amazing. You have a seriously divorced from reality to Andrew, please post a video of that if you've got one. You're seriously divorced from reality if you think you can run at a guy armed with a rifle and quote win. Yeah, it's so insane that it approaches suicide. And I understand there might be situations where you should do that, right? Like you're in a classroom. This happened at a school shooting where they're in a room, they can't escape. They bum rush the guy, and one of the guys, it's like, what do? You don't have an option. They all had an option. They all had an option there, and they chose to attack a guy with a rifle. Now, the second one could be tragically that it could tragically be if they think they're stopping a mass shooter. In which case, I'm really sorry, but you didn't. You stopped the guy who just committed a justifiable self-defensive act, and now you're going to die because you rushed into it. And that's really sad if that's what happened. But I would not be surprised if their motives were less genteel than that. But we'll see. Looked up Free Kyle on Facebook, and they removed all traces of it to keep the community safe from what? Rightful scrutiny or self-defense or... I mean, everyone knows that these tech giants have their biases, and so I don't know if they consciously enact them or if they're just subconsciously doing it, but they are. Jews took up German names to blend in. Okay, Lemon, did they do that to blend in, or did they do that because they married Gentiles, or both? And also, if Jews really wanted to blend in, they would stop cutting dick. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no bigger giveaway, so... Yeah, I want to see a link to this debate, this Friedman-Humer debate. September rally in Portland will be crazy. Everything in Portland will be crazy. I actually have a relative, well, an in-law, somebody who's married to a relative of mine until recently, just for us, who tried to, well, I won't say where, but they tried to join an Antifa, and apparently didn't make the physical cut. That's great. Thanks for answering. I want to restore so badly, but I'm terrified, afraid of my antibiotics will affect me in some way. Oh, well. I don't think it will. Ask a doctor, but mitosis is just your skin expanding. And so if the antibiotics were going to stop that from happening, I'm sure your doctor would have said, hey, like I have a friend, for instance, not a friend, but I know somebody who got really horribly burned. And because he got so burned, his skin has lost the ability to do mitosis. It's not elastic really anymore. He can't gain weight. He has to stay below, like whatever, 185 pounds. If he goes above that, the skin will actually rip. And, so he has to be very, very careful about that. If your doctor did not advise that and didn't say, hey, your skin is no longer going to work, I think he would have told you. And there's nothing about restoration that is going to risk bacterial infection. So you're probably okay. But ask a doctor to be sure. It's a mob mentality. IQ is lower than average, and almost all social inhibition is removed. Yeah, and this can happen to anyone. I noticed this in high school going to football games. You know, I would go to the football games, and you get into it, and you can almost feel this animalistic, like, anger, hatred, aggression towards, like, the other team, the other town, and it's like, why? And I know it always didn't sit well with me. I would feel like, why am I, like, this is very, I had watched enough shows like The Human Animal with Desmond Morris. I watched that show in middle school, and was like, wow, this is like some kind of, we're social animals, which is, you know, our strength. But if you ever read Sapiens, he has a part where he goes, you know, you put one human in a forest, he's dinner. You put 100 humans in the forest, and they're going to wipe out everything. Like, so it's wonderful, but it has a cost, and sometimes we can surrender our autonomy in a way that is terrifying to ourselves and to others. So, yep. Brainwashing doesn't absolve one's behavior. Tell me about it. Confessions of a reluctant former hypno-slave. I still feel guilty about some of the stuff that I did, but whatever. The stopping a mass shooter argument is not valid until the third person is shot. Yeah. Like, you gotta wait for them to kill 3 people, and then it's a mass shooting, and then you can stop the mass shooter. Otherwise, you're only trying to stop a single homicide or a multiple homicide, and then you're not allowed to stop it. Well, Jeff, that is funny, but I mean, you should be able to stop even one homicide from happening. So, you know, humor ethics is greater than Rothbard ethics. Oh, maybe. But, you know, who read who there? Who read who there? Hypnoslave, I want to try that. Sounds fun. I'm just going to do whatever at this rate, being inside a lot. That is becoming more of a thing. I've had people now reach out to me like, hey, can you help me with this? I am encountering some weird hypno stuff. And I know the owner of the biggest gay hypno site, and he said that his site's exploded. It's super popular now. So, like, and the other thing about it is it's not that hard to learn. It is not something that requires any money. It's not something that requires years or months. You can learn it in a few hours. You can get at it with, you know, several hours of practice. So, and its potential is like, it's pretty great. So a lot of people are going to be doing it, I think. Biggest lie behind all of these left-wing movements is believing the government will incapable of solving racism in any form as a pile of laws will solve hate. No, it's very similar to them saying we need to build a great society, right? We're going to build a giant state to end poverty. And we built the giant state, right? And we got the drug war to boot and Vietnam, and a huge military-industrial complex that we're still saddled with. We didn't get rid of poverty, right? And the strides that we have made towards alleviating poverty didn't come from the government. So, yes, they'll come up with these things that they want the government to fix, which are unfixable, that will build a big government. Then the government will fail, and they'll say, well, the government needs more power. Yeah, there's no reason to think antibiotics will affect your rate of mitosis. Consult a doctor. Yeah, that's my bro, I'm not talking to my doctor about restoration. American doctors all support circumcision, and we don't want anything about restoration. You're in general correct, but, you know, look up Doctors Against Circumcision. That's an organization of doctors who oppose circumcision, so maybe look them up and ask them, or check out some of the forums, but you should be fine. All right, guys. Well, I know that the title is spelled wrong. I'm almost tempted to leave it that way so that like it doesn't get deleted, Facebook style. But look, this is an interesting case for all kinds of reasons. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around it. There are actual questions to be asked about the ethics. I think it's very clearly a case, or it seems very clearly from the evidence we have, a case of self-defense. And I think what we have here is some of these sorry, bless me. Some of these anti-Rittenhouse arguments are so blatantly stupid and weak that I have to wonder if it's just an indication, like the intuition is, I just don't like this guy. I just don't like what happened. So what am I going to say? You know, so if it turned out he was 18, they still would hate him and they would say, well, he crossed state lines. And if it turned out he actually, you know, what if actually a month ago he changed his driver's license to Kenosha? Would they be like, or he changed it to Wisconsin? They would say, well, he went to the next town over. And if he lived in, you know, there's always going to be something. They're just never going to be satisfied because they just hate this guy. You know, there's two things. The left they hate self-defense. They hate gun ownership. And they also lionize not only the protests, but even the rioting, right? There's not really anybody on the left who will condemn rioting in any sense. There are probably some who are uncomfortable with it, but most of them seem to venerate it, you know, and celebrate it. And so you have somebody who's doing something that they hate. You know, he's apparently, I mean, they say he's Hispanic, but he's just going to be a white Hispanic like George Zimmerman, right? He's got a gun. He likes Trump. I mean, I don't know how many people are like, look, he went to a Trump rally. Fuck, what does that have to do with whether it was justified or not? Yeah, if he was a BLM supporter, this would be completely different. And we did. There was a BLM supporter who killed a Trump supporter, and it's not in the news at all. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Like, so you've got this guy who is, you know, we talk about intersectionality. He's intersecting in all the things that the left hates the most. But then it is even weird, though, because even some libertarians are even looking at it and going like, well, but look, he's a cop bootlicking pig. He's a pig. People were telling me he's a pig. I'm like, he's not a cop. He wasn't acting like a cop. He wasn't doing things cops do. He was doing the things cops pretend they do, you know, but he was defending a business and he shot in self-defense, which is more than can be said for most police shootings, right? Even when cops do shoot in self-defense, it's often because they're in a situation that they really did instigate, right? And this is probably what's going to happen when I analyze the other shooting. I'll have to look at it, though, is like cops put themselves in a bad situation. You know, they intercede, they get into other people's business, and sometimes that causes trouble, and then they kill someone in self-defense. It's like, what were you doing in their house? What were you doing pulling them over? What were you doing, you know, like, whatever it was they were doing? And the thing is, defending another business, I don't care if he crossed state lines or a town, that doesn't matter. He's defending another business. Apparently on their invitation, right? I have yet to see proof of that, but he was alleging it before, he's alleging it after. I don't think in the videos before that he's like, hey, I might kill a couple people today. I should probably put out an alibi and say I was out here just defending people. I'll also go clean some graffiti and put out some dumpster fires just so it looks good. And then when I kill some people, you really think that's the evil genius we're talking about here? Like, no. I think what Kyle did was noble. The cops refused to defend private property because that was never in their main goal. We need to defend ourselves this week. Yeah, that was the other thing. Is people are like, he's a vigilante. It's not his job. I'm like, well, whose job is it? The cops? The cops weren't doing it. And you can be sympathetic and say, well, the cops weren't doing it because of all this political unrest, and they know that if they do anything at all, they're going to be accused of racism, blah, 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 so they can't do anything. Okay? That's not a completely unjustified reading. But even more than that, even regularly, they don't do this. Cops don't get stationed at your house. They don't defend you. They don't defend your property. You call them after the fact, and if they've got time, they'll get around to it maybe. The craziest theory was that he wore latex gloves to hide fingerprints. No mask, but gloves on. Lol. Yeah, talk about like, look how incriminating he is. He pretended to, yeah. Rioters just doing their jobs. Yeah. Yeah, so the cops don't defend you. They don't defend your stuff. And so this, well, he's a vigilante. You know, I think I would have to look up the definition of vigilante. I think a vigilante is somebody who goes getting people, right? I'm going to go door to door until I find this person. Just defending yourself or just defending property does not make you a vigilante. If that's the standard, then all defense of any type is vigilantism. This entire incident is another example of the failure of the state's ability to justify its purpose. Yeah. They fail all the time. People are just inured to it and they interpret it as something else, and they just look at, well, the state needs to be operated differently. The state needs more power. They don't have enough, whatever. Yeah, the cops are right. The cops are not going to defend us. Politicians certainly won't and would rather see us cities burn than do anything. Isn't this where the Second Amendment is also for? Yeah. And I'd also say for the alt-right people out there, you know, these liberal democracies that we have in the West, right? Maybe this is different in Tsarist Russia or Nazi Germany, but like in the West, they are not going to crack down on communists, right? The left, the government is run by leftists, right? I mean, even Trump is a leftist in most senses, but the legislatures, the bureaucracies, the people who live in DC, the people who head up all these agencies, they're leftists. There's a good book. Arthur Herman has a great book on McCarthy, and I don't have it because I listened to it on audiobook. I think it is, just look up the book MacArthur. It might be MacArthur Revisited or MacArthur Reexamined, but it's by Arthur Herman. It's a great book, and he talks about how most people on the left, they look at a communist and they go, that's at least half good. You know, they may not be a communist, but they look at a communist and say, that's half good. They've got some good. They don't look at it like, not only is that completely evil, it's fucking stupid, which is what it really is, right? That's the truth. And that is endemic. It's in the Republican Party. It's in the Democratic Party. It's in Congress. It's in your police chief, your prosecutor, your mayor, the cops, right? The cops aren't anarcho-capitalist libertarians, you know? Oh, yeah, we need police and we need schools and we need this and we need that. And like, yeah, helping the poor, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to crack down on communists. They're not doing it. They're just letting them go. They're just letting them go. So, like, if you're a libertarian, what are we... And that's weird, too. I'm a libertarian. I want the police to do this. You shouldn't do it yourself. If not you, then who? You know? And again, I don't think he's obligated. You're not obligated to defend other people. But if you do, that's not wrong. So... Rothbard wrote in For New Liberty, and I haven't read that in like 15 years, that you can't arrest someone without literally witnessing the crime in person. He also, however, believed you could have trials without the defendant present. Yeah, well, you can have trials in absentia. I think that's fine. Communism killed more people than the czars ever could. Absolutely. Also, somebody needs to do a movie about Ivan the Terrible, the original Stalin. Well, Mark Gage, there's actually a very famous Soviet film by Sergei Eisenstein about Ivan the Terrible, and it was one of Stalin's favorite movies. So you can buy that on Amazon. Sergei Eisenstein, Ivan the Terrible. It's supposed to be good. I've not seen it, though. I've seen clips. Sometimes they were able to be more honest about the Tsarist past when they were communist than they could ever be about the communist present. But, all right, guys. Well, you will have to talk to Ivan about that. I have not talked to Ivan in quite some time. I've never met an alt-right person in real life. I've met them on my channel. I think I've met them in real life, too. Well, listen, guys, I've got jiu-jitsu practice coming up. I got to go. But thank you all for watching. And pretty good stream here. Wow. It's 10% more than I normally get. So thanks again.
update on streaming now. My thoughts on the Kamala Harris book. YouTube.com/official. Done. Okay. Whew. Hey, everybody. So we're going to go through it. I read it. I'm going to give it a chance till we have 100 people in here. Hope everyone's having a good Labor Day weekend. I have to write an article about this for the Federalist, which is going to happen soon. So I'm just going to give people a sec to get in here, and then we can talk about the book. What is that, like 5 cents, or like the price of a kid's kidney in your shithole country? Okay. Oh, we got 100 people here. Okay, so let's talk about it. By the way, I really hope you all, where should I put this cow? I really hope you all enjoyed the episode of the Timcast I did yesterday, Tim Pool's show, Tim IRL. That was a lot of fun. We went long. It was kind of interesting seeing people's, I don't want to talk about Austin in another live stream. It was kind of interesting seeing people's reactions. Because, you know, me and Tim hung out for a bit beforehand. We're pals, a lot of mutual respect. And seeing how people perceived our interaction, to me as a person who was there, it's always very interesting because people just read things that aren't there. I think some people were like upset that Tim was interrupting me. I wasn't upset. I thought it was a very good conversation. I adore him, and I know the feeling is mutual. You know, so I'll be back on at some point in the near future. I thought we had a really great conversation. I think Tim is someone who is intellectually curious about certain subjects or areas of knowledge that I have some expertise on, and he's very interested in hearing it. And when that happens with the host, I feel like that also extends to the audience, that they are like, oh, let me hear this, what they have to say. So let me tell the backstory of this book. So someone messaged me on love the Tim Pool appearance. My 19-year-old pre-med son and teacher wife both love the education talk. Navigating from the inside is difficult. By teacher wife, I assume you mean it's your husband. I fucked up the joke. Anyway, Mazel Tov on the son. And I do appreciate your wife's position, because it's gotten me really rough. So I was on Twitter, and this is one of the times I got owned. I was on Twitter, and someone asked me, what would it take for you to listen to Kamala Harris's book? She reads it herself. Let me explain something to you, from some publishing background. All these politicians release these books. They're basically like a press release. They're never written by the person themselves. It's amazing because blue-pilled people perceive every screen as a window. So they know that presidents have speechwriters. They know this. They know this in one part of their mind. But they can't wrap their heads around that when President Obama delivered a speech, he didn't write every word. Now, he certainly went through it. Bright man, edited it, made changes. He didn't write it. He had a lot of editorial input, but he didn't write it. He just tried to write it. They tried to write it in his voice. If I had to speak correctly, they were useful. And so what happens, for example, I'm sure all of you forgot, during the 2016 campaign, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton released books. I don't mean her second autobiography. He released a book called Crippled America. I'm not joking. Look it up. It has no cognitive content. Every chapter is Social Security, No one in Congress knows what they're doing. It's ridiculous. Everyone's laughing at us. We need someone in Washington who can settle this and take care of our seniors. Next chapter, the environment. No one knows what it's. Every chapter's like this. And there's no. I read it to be like, what would Trump be like as president? And the only thing that he said that was definitive is, I will not touch Social Security. Everything else is like, I'll fix the problem. What does that entail? Like, literally, what does that entail? So Hillary and Tim Kaine also released a book, which like I'm sure no one read. I'm sure they had nothing to do with writing this book. They're campaigning. They don't have time. It's not an insult to them, but people really think that these politicians write their own books while knowing full well that they have a staff of speechwriters and people to write for them. And as a result, so I'm on Twitter, someone says, how much would it cost for you to listen to Kamala Harris's book? And I said $1,000 because I thought I'm being ridiculous. I'm not going to get $1,000 to read this book. Maybe I'll get like 400, and then I can just pocket it. And someone just jumps in. Here's $1,000, slides it across the table. I wouldn't pocket it. It would have to be wasted. That's how spike funding works. And I'm like, what have I done? So I messaged him. I sent him a special present, and I said, is it okay if I read the book instead of listen to it? Because it's a lot easier for me to take notes as I'm reading. And he says, sure, that's fine. So I did read it. And I got to tell you, the fact that there was a ghostwriter from her staff, the book's not bad. Like, I was terrified it would be a complete cringe fest nightmare. Someone in my locals, like malice.locals.com, if you guys want to join, made the comment that their girlfriend was a lefty. Like, they had a book group and they read all of the books by the candidates, and the lefties all thought Kamala Harris's was the worst. So I'm like, oh God, this is going to be hell on earth. And I read the introduction on Tom Wood's show. I'm sure none of you listened to it because he's a very failed podcaster. And the introduction, I was like, what have I done? This is just going to be excruciating cringe fest 2020. And after the introduction, it's fine. It's fine. So, super engaging conversation with Tim. Have some mystery currency from another poop-hole country. Norway. Look, guys, look it up. The Prime Minister of Norway is Santa Claus's wife, Mrs. Claus. She looks Irma Stromberg, something like that, Norberg. She looks exactly like Santa Claus's wife. So I read the book, and I'm going to go through it, and it's a perfectly fine read. It's not eye-rolling. There's a few moments where you're like, holy shit. Nor is it particularly empty of content. Like, there's some concerns. One is, it's like all these, like the North Korean propaganda, where all these stories, and someone's life is a mess, and here comes Kamala Harris. And she, by the way, on like page 1, she's like, it's pronounced Kamala, like the pronunciation, Kamala. So Kamala Harris is like, steps in and saves the problem. She doesn't do that. There's very little self-glorification in it. She avoids talking a lot about ideas, and when she does, it's not that bad. Like you might disagree with her, but she's not being completely evasive. And she does tell enough of her life story that you can tell what is important to her, or at least what she wants you to think is important about her, but it's there. So the book was perfectly fine and readable. Let me get the quotes that I read from the book, and then we're going to go through them. Oh, shit. Okay, so I took them in my trusty iPod. Second. Oh, that sound, by the way, is, no one commits to a bit like Michael Malice. Okay. I'm just going to the beginning. And we're going to go through it this way. You're never going to have to read it. Okay, so this is page, I don't remember what page it is, early on. And this is where I read it on Tom's show, and I was just excruciating. It's election night 2016. She's elected to the Senate. This is a major accomplishment, like a major accomplishment. She's having her party, victory. At a certain point, my 9-year-old godson, Alexander, came up to me with big tears welling in his eyes. I assumed one of the other kids in our group had been teasing him about something. Come here, little man. What's wrong? This book really speaks to me. Alexander looked up and locked eyes with me. His voice was trembling. Auntie Kamala, that man can't win. He's not going to win, is he? Referring to Trump. First of all, this is how we make fun of you. This is on Twitter all the time about my 3-month-old fetus punched my wife in the stomach and said, Mom, how can I live in a world where we're not in the Paris Peace Accords or Paris Climate Change Accords? What am I supposed to tell him or her? No, you can't tell me. You're 9. Your auntie is about to be in the Senate and you don't know Trump's name? That man? Really? Really? Alexander's worry broke my heart. I bet you this is the part she actually wrote, the introduction, because the rest of the book is fine. Our prime minister is the most someone's mom out of anyone. She's Santa's wife. She's adorable. And she speaks perfect English, like everyone in Norway, but it's kind of cute to see. And then everyone clapped. Oh, we're going to get to... Well, everyone did clap. This is her victory party. Everyone clapped. That is factual and truthful.